The crystal chandelier cast shadows across the mahogany dining table as I sat surrounded by my family's weekly ritual of judgment disguised as dinner conversation. My father, Richard Blackwood, carved the prime rib with surgical precision while delivering his latest verdict on my life choices. "Samantha, this little hobby of yours has gone on long enough," he said, not bothering to look up from his plate. 26 years old and still playing with computers like a teenager. It's pathetic. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I forced myself to chew the perfectly prepared meal that suddenly tasted like cardboard. Across the table, my older brother Marcus smirked, adjusting his Armani tie, the one Dad had bought him for his promotion to senior associate at Blackwood and Associates, the family law firm that had been our legacy for 3 generations. "Dad's right, Sam," Marcus chimed in, his voice dripping with false concern. "This tech startup thing was cute for a while, but it's time to grow up. We've got a position waiting for you at the firm." My mother, Patricia, nodded sagely while sipping her wine. "Darling, you've always been brilliant with numbers. Think how successful you could be as a corporate lawyer like your father and grandfather before him." I set down my fork, watching the family that had never understood me continue their intervention. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were discussing my future in the very dining room I'd bought and paid for, in the house I'd secretly purchased for them last year through a shell company. But they didn't know that. As far as they knew, their youngest daughter was a failed entrepreneur living in a cramped studio apartment, surviving on ramen noodles and delusions of grandeur. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Samantha," my father continued, finally meeting my eyes with that disappointed expression I'd grown to despise, "I've been patient with this nonsense for 3 years. But enough is enough. TechSphere Solutions, what kind of ridiculous name is that anyway, is going nowhere. You've burned through your trust fund, you're practically living in poverty, and for what? Some fantasy about revolutionizing cybersecurity?" The words stung because they contained just enough truth to be believable. I had burned through my trust fund, but not on failed business ventures. I'd used it as seed money to build something extraordinary, something that was about to change everything. But they saw only what I wanted them to see, the struggling daughter who disappointed the family legacy. "Your cybersecurity company," Marcus laughed, actually laughed at the table. "Sam, you know Dad's firm handles the tech contracts for half the Fortune 500, right? If there was anything revolutionary about what you're doing, we'd know about it." I smiled quietly, thinking about the encrypted files on my laptop upstairs. Files containing contracts that would make Marcus's head spin. Files that represented deals worth more than Blackwood and Associates' entire annual revenue. But those files were my secret, just like everything else about my real life. "I've spoken with several of my clients," Dad continued, warming to his theme. "Real tech executives, not weekend warriors playing at entrepreneurship. They all say the same thing: the cybersecurity market is oversaturated. What could a girl with a computer science degree possibly offer that billion-dollar corporations haven't already thought of?" The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. A girl with a computer science degree. As if my PhD from MIT meant nothing. As if the patents I'd filed under various shell companies were worthless. As if the revolutionary encryption algorithm I'd developed hadn't already been quietly implemented by 3 major tech giants under NDAs so strict that even I couldn't discuss them publicly. "Richard," my mother said gently, placing her manicured hand on his arm, "perhaps we're being too harsh. Samantha has always marched to her own drum." "Marched to her own drum right off a cliff," Marcus muttered, earning a sharp look from our mother. Dad held up his hand for silence. "No, Patricia. Sometimes tough love is necessary. Samantha, I'm giving you an ultimatum. Close down this embarrassing venture and come work for the family firm, or you're on your own. Completely. No more safety net, no more family support." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, marking the seconds as my family waited for my response. They expected tears, pleas, perhaps a grateful acceptance of their generous offer to save me from myself. Instead, I stood up slowly, smoothing my deliberately modest dress, a $50 piece I'd bought specifically for these family dinners to maintain my facade of struggling entrepreneur. The irony was exquisite. They were threatening to cut me off while sitting in the house I'd bought them, drinking wine from the collection I'd curated, wearing jewelry I'd anonymously gifted through various channels. I understand, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning inside me. You've made your position very clear. Good, Dad said, relief evident in his voice. I'll have Marcus draw up the paperwork for your position. You can start Monday. Actually, I replied, picking up my purse, I think I'll pass on the generous offer. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My father's face went through a spectrum of emotions, surprise, anger, and finally, cold disappointment. Then you've made your choice, he said with finality. Don't come crawling back when this fantasy of yours crashes and burns. The Blackwood name means something in this city, and I won't have it associated with failure. I nodded, walking toward the dining room door. At the threshold, I turned back to look at them one last time, my father with his righteous anger, my brother with his smug satisfaction, my mother with her worried concern. They had no idea what they'd just done. No idea that their ultimatum had just freed me from the last constraint holding me back. I love you all, I said simply. And I forgive you for not believing in me. The drive back to my supposed studio apartment took me through the city's financial district, past the gleaming towers where the real power players worked. But I didn't stop at any struggling artist's loft. Instead, I pulled into the private garage of a converted warehouse in the tech corridor, my real home and the secret headquarters of TechSphere Solutions. The industrial elevator carried me to the penthouse level, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the city skyline. This was my sanctuary, my laboratory, my war room. 3 levels of cutting-edge technology, a team of 12 brilliant engineers and cybersecurity experts, and enough venture capital backing to fund a small country's defense budget. As I changed out of my costume, the modest dress and worn shoes, and into my real clothes, I reflected on the evening's performance. 3 years of carefully maintained deception had just paid its final dividend. No more weekly dinners, no more disappointed looks, no more having to pretend my company was failing when it was actually on the verge of changing the entire cybersecurity landscape. My phone buzzed with a text from my COO, David Chen. The Peterson Industries hack attempt just failed spectacularly. Our new AI defense system didn't just stop them, it traced them back to their source and automatically filed a police report. The FBI is calling it unprecedented. I smiled, pouring myself a glass of the same wine my family had been drinking, though they didn't know I'd sent them that particular vintage. Peterson Industries was one of our beta clients, a Fortune 100 company that had been targeted by one of the most sophisticated hacking groups in Eastern Europe. Our defense system hadn't just protected them, it had turned the attack into a counteroffensive that would likely result in international arrests. Another message from David. Oh, and that reporter from Forbes called again. She's very insistent about the interview. Forbes. I'd been dodging Sarah Martinez's calls for weeks, not because I didn't want the publicity, but because the timing hadn't been right. I'd needed to maintain my cover until after tonight's dinner, until after my family had finally shown their true colors and cut me loose from their expectations. But now? Now I was free to be who I really was. I walked to my home office, a space that would have made any tech CEO jealous, and pulled up Sarah's contact information. It was nearly 10 p.m., but journalists kept odd hours, especially when they were chasing a story that could make their career. Sarah Martinez, she answered on the first ring, her voice alert despite the late hour. Ms. Martinez, this is Samantha Blackwood from TechSphere Solutions. I believe you've been trying to reach me. The pause on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Sarah had been pursuing this story for months, trying to get an interview with the mysterious CEO of the cybersecurity company that was quietly revolutionizing the industry. The company that major corporations whispered about in boardrooms but couldn't quite pin down. The company that seemed to appear out of nowhere with solutions that were light years ahead of anything else on the market. Ms. Blackwood, Sarah's voice was carefully controlled, professional. Yes, I've been hoping to speak with you about TechSphere Solutions. Your company has been making some remarkable waves in the cybersecurity space. I'm ready to tell my story, I said, settling into my desk chair. All of it. But I want to be clear about something, this isn't just going to be a tech story. This is about family, expectations, and what happens when people underestimate you because you don't fit their definition of success. I'm listening, Sarah said, and I could hear the excitement creeping into her voice. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll send you an address. Come alone, bring a photographer if you want, and be prepared to have your assumptions challenged. After I hung up, I stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still discussing my shocking defiance over dessert. My father was likely ranting about ungrateful children, my brother was probably calculating how my absence would affect his standing in the firm, and my mother was worrying about what the neighbors would think. They had no idea that their disappointment of a daughter had just agreed to what would become one of the most talked about business profiles of the year. They couldn't imagine that the pathetic hobby they dismissed was about to be revealed as a company valued at over $2 billion by the most conservative estimates. I pulled up my secure email and began typing a message to David and my core team. Subject line: Tomorrow changes everything. The message was brief: we're going public. Full disclosure. Sarah Martinez from Forbes will be here at 9 a.m. for interviews and photos. Make sure the demo lab is ready. I want her to see everything we've been working on. It's time the world knew what TechSphere Solutions really is. As I prepared for bed, I thought about my father's words earlier that evening. Don't come crawling back when this fantasy of yours crashes and burns. The irony was perfect. By this time tomorrow, he'd be reading Forbes' preliminary online article about his daughter's company. By next month, when the cover story hit newsstands, he'd be seeing my face on magazine covers across the country. But this wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about validation. For 3 years, I'd hidden my success to keep peace with a family that couldn't see past their own narrow definition of achievement. I'd pretended to struggle while building an empire, pretended to fail while revolutionizing an entire industry. Tomorrow, the pretending would end. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., giving myself enough time to prepare for what would undoubtedly be one of the most important days of my professional life. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of my father opening his morning paper to see his pathetic daughter staring back at him from the business section. The last thing I remembered before sleep claimed me was the sound of my phone buzzing with notifications, probably more beta clients reporting successful defenses against cyber attacks, more investors wanting meetings, more proof that the family legacy I'd been expected to join couldn't compare to the empire I'd built on my own. Part 1 of my story was ending. But the real story, the one that would be told in boardrooms and business schools for years to come, was just beginning. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse headquarters as I made final preparations for Sarah Martinez's arrival. David Chen, my COO, was coordinating with our head of security to ensure our most sensitive projects remained classified while still showcasing enough to tell the real story. The Peterson Industries footage is ready, David reported, adjusting his tie nervously. The real-time defense visualization should blow her mind. Also, 3 more Fortune 500 companies called this morning wanting emergency consultations after word spread about the hack prevention. I nodded, checking my watch. 8:47 a.m. In 13 minutes, Sarah Martinez would walk through those doors and witness the empire I'd built in shadow. My phone had been buzzing all morning with notifications I'd been ignoring, missed calls from my mother, angry texts from Marcus, and a particularly venomous voicemail from my father demanding I come to my senses before it was too late. Too late for what? I wondered. Too late to save their reputation. When the truth came out, the elevator chimed, and Sarah Martinez stepped into my world. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that immediately began cataloging everything around her. Her photographer, a lanky man with expensive equipment, followed close behind. Ms. Blackwood, Sarah said, her voice betraying none of the surprise I could see in her eyes as she took in the sophisticated headquarters. This is not what I expected. I smiled, gesturing toward the wall of monitors displaying global cyber threat assessments in real time. People often see what they expect to see. Please, call me Samantha. Coffee? As we settled into the conference room, Sarah pulled out her recorder and notepad. I'll be honest, Samantha. I've been researching TechSphere Solutions for months, and the more I dug, the less sense it made. A company that emerged seemingly overnight with technology that's years ahead of anything else on the market. Clients who speak in whispers about your capabilities but won't go on record. What's the real story? I leaned back in my chair, finally free to tell the truth. The real story is that I've been living two lives for 3 years. The public one, where I'm a struggling entrepreneur disappointing my prestigious family. And the private one, where I've built something that's about to fundamentally change how corporations think about cybersecurity. Sarah's eyes lit up. Start from the beginning. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The initial breakthrough that had led to my revolutionary encryption algorithm. The decision to work in stealth mode while the technology matured. The careful cultivation of beta clients who signed NDAs that basically made them disappear from public view. The multiple shell companies and holding structures that had kept my name out of business filings. But why the secrecy? Sarah asked. Most tech entrepreneurs would kill for this kind of publicity. I pulled up the security footage from Peterson Industries' attempted hack, the one that had happened just last night. Because I needed time to perfect what we do. Watch this. The footage showed our AI defense system in action. As the hackers penetrated Peterson's outer defenses, our system didn't just block them, it learned from their methods, adapted in real time, and then launched a sophisticated counterattack that traced the intrusion back to its source. The entire sequence took less than 30 seconds. Sarah's photographer was snapping pictures rapidly. This is incredible, she breathed. It's like watching the future. This is the present, I corrected. We've prevented 47 major cyber attacks in the last 6 months alone. Attacks that would have cost our clients hundreds of millions in damages and lost data. My phone buzzed with yet another call from my father. I declined it and looked at Sarah. The reason I've finally agreed to this interview is that last night, my family gave me an ultimatum. Join the family law firm or be completely cut off from family support. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I'm guessing they don't know about all this? I gestured around the room. They think I'm a failure living in a studio apartment, surviving on ramen noodles. They have no idea that I'm the CEO of a company that Goldman Sachs valued at $2.3 billion last month. The photographer nearly dropped his camera. Sarah stopped writing and stared at me. Did you say billion? With a B? Conservative estimate, I confirmed. We've had acquisition offers from Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. All rejected. We're not for sale because what we're building is bigger than any single company. David knocked and entered, carrying a tablet. Samantha, I'm sorry to interrupt. But we've got a situation. 3 major news outlets just called about the Peterson Industries story. Apparently, the FBI is holding a press conference this afternoon about the arrests they made based on our counterintelligence. Sarah's journalistic instincts kicked into overdrive. The FBI is involved? Our system doesn't just defend, I explained. It gathers evidence. When hackers attack our clients, they leave digital fingerprints. Our AI compiles those into prosecutable cases and delivers them directly to law enforcement. We've helped the FBI arrest 43 international cybercriminals. This year alone. This is? Sarah shook her head in amazement. This is the biggest tech story of the year. Maybe the decade. My secure line rang, the one only government contacts used. I answered on speaker with Sarah's permission. Ms. Blackwood, this is Director Harrison from the NSA. I apologize for the short notice, but we need to schedule an urgent meeting about expanding our partnership. The Peterson Industries counterstrike has caught the attention of some very senior people in Washington. After I hung up, Sarah was frantically scribbling notes. The NSA? You work with the government? Selectively, I said. Only when national security is directly threatened. We've helped prevent 3 attacks on critical infrastructure and 1 attempted breach of the power grid. David's tablet chimed. With an urgent alert. He glanced at it and his face went pale. Samantha, you need to see this. Your family's law firm just issued a press release. He handed me the tablet, and I read my father's statement with growing disbelief. Blackwood and Associates is proud to announce that our cybersecurity consulting division, led by the brilliant Samantha Blackwood, has achieved remarkable success. We've always known our daughter would make the family proud. Sarah leaned over to read it. There, taking credit? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. They found out. Somehow, they figured out what TechSphere really is, and now they're trying to claim me as their success story. My personal phone exploded with calls and texts. Marcus, Sam, we need to talk immediately. My mother, darling, why didn't you tell us about your government contracts? My father, family meeting. Now. This is perfect, Sarah said, her reporter's instincts recognizing pure gold. The family that called your business pathetic is now trying to take credit for your success. Can we document their reaction when they realize you're not coming back? Before I could answer, David rushed back in. The lobby security just called. There's a man downstairs claiming to be your father, demanding to see you immediately. He's got 2 other people with him. I looked at Sarah. Want to see the real story unfold? In real time? 20 minutes later, the elevator opened to reveal my father, Marcus, and our family's publicist, Janet Walsh. My father's face was a mixture of rage and barely controlled panic. Marcus looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Janet was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to manage the crisis they'd just discovered. Samantha, my father began, his voice tight with controlled emotion, we need to discuss this situation immediately. Which situation is that, Dad? I asked innocently. The one where you called my business pathetic, or the one where you just issued a press release claiming credit for my success? Sarah and her photographer were capturing every moment. My father's eyes darted to them nervously. Who are these people? He demanded. Sarah Martinez from Forbes, I replied smoothly. She's doing a cover story on TechSphere Solutions. I was just telling her about last night's dinner conversation. Janet stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, perhaps we should handle this privately. Oh no, I said, my voice hardening. 3 years of privacy. 3 years of letting you think I was a failure. While I built this empire. I think transparency is exactly what we need right now. Marcus found his voice. Sam, we had no idea, you had no idea because you never bothered to ask real questions, I cut him off. You saw what you wanted to see. A disappointing daughter. Who couldn't live up to the family legacy. My father stepped closer, his lawyer's instincts taking over. Samantha, we can work this out. The family firm could be your legal counsel. We could create a partnership structure, like the partnership you offered me last night. I interrupted. Join the firm or be cut off completely. Those were your exact words. Sarah was scribbling furiously. For the record, Mr. Blackwood. You threatened to disown your daughter if she didn't abandon her company. My father's face flushed red. That's not, the context was different. The context, I said quietly, was that you called my life's work pathetic. You told me to grow up and stop playing with computers. You said the Blackwood name couldn't be associated with failure. The room fell silent except for the quiet click of the photographer's camera. David appeared with another urgent update. Samantha, I'm sorry, but this can't wait. The Wall Street Journal just called. Someone leaked that you turned down a $4 billion acquisition offer from Amazon last month. They want a statement. I watched my father's face go through a spectrum of emotions as the full scope of what he dismissed became clear. Not just success, but the kind of generational wealth that would have made the family law firm look like a lemonade stand. $4 billion? Marcus whispered. Conservative offer, I replied. Jeff Bezos himself was on the call. I explained that TechSphere isn't for sale because what we're building will be worth 10 times that in 5 years. Janet was typing frantically on her phone. The press release we issued this morning needs to be retracted immediately, I finished. Because you have no authority to speak for TechSphere Solutions. You have no connection to my company beyond biological coincidence. My father straightened, his pride warring with the realization of what he'd lost. Samantha, you're still family. We can move past this. Can we? I asked. Yesterday I was pathetic. Today I'm family. What changed, Dad? Me, or your perception of me? Sarah stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, for the record, are you acknowledging that you were wrong about your daughter's business prospects? My father looked directly into her recording device. My daughter has always been brilliant. We've always supported her endeavors. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made of last night's dinner conversation. My father's voice filled the room. This little hobby of yours has gone on long enough. 26 years old and still playing with computers like a teenager. It's pathetic. The silence that followed was deafening. For 3 years, I said quietly, I maintained 2 lives because I thought family was worth the effort. I thought. Maybe someday you'd see past your own narrow definitions of success and be proud of what I'd accomplished. But last night, you made it clear that your love comes with conditions. I stood up, walking to the window overlooking the city. The irony is exquisite. The house you live in? I bought it. The wine collection you're so proud of? I curated it. The jewelry mom wears to charity galas? Anonymous gifts from shell companies I control. For years, I've been taking care of the family that thought I was a failure. My mother's voice came through Marcus's phone. She was calling him frantically. He answered on speaker without thinking. Marcus, thank God. The neighbors are calling. Someone saw the Forbes photographer going into Samantha's building. Mrs. Henderson says there are news vans outside. What's happening? I smiled sadly. What's happening, Mom, is that the pathetic daughter you were so disappointed in just became the most successful entrepreneur this city has ever produced. And the family that was supposed to support her through everything just became a cautionary tale about underestimating people you claim to love. My father made one last attempt. Samantha, we can fix this. Give us another chance. I looked at him, this man who had shaped so much of my drive to succeed, who had inspired me to prove myself worthy of the Blackwood name. You had every chance, Dad. 26 years of chances. But last night, you made a choice. You chose to cut me off rather than support something you didn't understand. I turned to Sarah. I think you have everything you need for your story. As security escorted my family to the elevator, my father turned back one last time. This isn't over, Samantha. You're right, I replied. It's just beginning. But you won't be part of it. The elevator doors closed, and I was left alone with the Forbes team and the empire I'd built in shadow. That was? Sarah shook her head. That was the most dramatic interview I've ever conducted. David approached with his tablet. The Peterson Industries press conference is starting. The FBI director is specifically mentioning tech sphere's assistance in the arrests. I nodded, settling back into my chair. The secret's out now. No more hiding, no more double life. Sarah looked up from her notes. What's next for you? For TechSphere? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. We change the world. We make cyberspace safe for everyone who depends on it. And we do it without worrying about disappointing people who never believed in us anyway. As Sarah packed up her equipment, she paused. For what it's worth, I think they'll regret this. Someday, when your face is on magazine covers and your company is mentioned in business school textbooks, they'll realize what they lost. I looked out at the city skyline, at the digital empire I'd built while my family slept soundly in their traditional world. Maybe. But by then, it won't matter. I'll have built something bigger than their approval, something that doesn't depend on family validation. 3 hours later, Forbes published the preliminary online story. The headline read, "The Billionaire in Hiding, How a 26-year-old failure built a cybersecurity empire while her family called her pathetic." Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with interview requests from every major media outlet. CNN, 60 Minutes, The Today Show. Everyone wanted to know how the mysterious founder of TechSphere Solutions had hidden in plain sight for 3 years, but the call that mattered most came at sunset, as I stood in my penthouse watching the city lights begin to twinkle. It was from my mentor at MIT, Dr. Elizabeth Chen. Samantha, her warm voice came through the phone, I just read the Forbes story. I'm so proud of you. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt truly supported. Not because of what I'd accomplished, but because someone had believed in me. When it mattered most, the Forbes cover story would run the following month, making me the youngest tech CEO ever featured. The story would be picked up by international media, spawning documentaries and business school case studies, but more importantly, I was finally free to be exactly who I was meant to be, not the disappointing daughter of a prestigious family, but the founder of something revolutionary, something that would outlast any law firm legacy. My father had been right about one thing: the Blackwood name did mean something in this city. After my story broke, it meant being the family that was too blind to see brilliance when it lived under their own roof. As for me, I had work to do, a world to protect, and an empire to build, one that would be measured not by family approval, but by the lives it saved and the future it secured. The pathetic little hobby had just become the foundation of the next digital revolution. And I couldn't wait to see what came next. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen.